Somebody once told me the world is gonna roll me. I ain't the
Monday, a manic Monday. Not a great one, if I'm honest. We did get some work done on this. Mike got the thermostat in. Third time was the charm, I think. He was able to do the first one, or the last one in one try, which I've never even seen before. This one took a little bit more, but it's done. We had somebody rent out this lift today, so that was the majority of the day. He was late and then went 6 hours past schedule, so I couldn't get my car up there to do the wheel speed sensor diagnosis until way late. But I did, took the sensor out. There's a little bit of goop on it. I cleaned it up, lots of brake clean, lots of compressed air in this rear left sensor bore. Determined that the reluctor ring is damaged on the bearing, so that sucks. That's worst case scenario, which pretty much turns into a complete rear suspension rebuild, including these wheel carriers. I'm going to replace both speed sensors. That's obviously going to mean ball joints, H-arm hardware. I'm going to do the rear integral links because they are original and they're actually only $14. They're super cheap from Lemporter, my local supplier, so I should have those tomorrow. The bearing is a two-piece thing. So you have the actual bearing, which is here, and you have the hub flange, which is here. And there's a total of 14 proprietary tools, none of which, or any of which that I looked up, are not available anymore and extremely expensive when they were last available. So I replaced both of these components, the hub flange and the bearing, on my car in 2016 with the rebuild. They're pretty clean. Maybe they'd come apart a little bit easier, but you just need really, really big, aggressive hydraulic tools. Jed says that this 20-ton bottle jack and shop press wouldn't even do it. You need something in the neighborhood of like a 60 or an 80-ton or even a 100-ton press. So that sucks. Looks like I'm going to be outsourcing it to probably Jed up in LA County or Orange County, wherever he is. I'm not going to do the struts. That's going to save some cost and some time, thus labor costs. They're okay right now. They're not bouncing or anything. They're not blown. They are older, 9.7 years according to my spreadsheet, about 60-something thousand miles. The fronts are only slightly newer, so that'll probably be a project later this year, next year, the following, whenever one of them blows, I'll do all four, and we'll do the struts and springs and stuff. But in the meantime, it's going to be, so the carriers changed and the guide links changed. Guide links bolt to the top of the carrier, which would be that would be this one, I think, right? If the brakes are on the inside, I don't know. One of those is for the guide link. And those changed in July of 2000, and all the carriers I have are after that. So we're going to be facelifting the rear carriers, which means new guide links. So do I have one of these without wheels on it? Yes, I'll show you on that. So the scope of the project is replacing both rear wheel carriers, both rear bearings. We'll reuse the hub flanges. They're no longer available anywhere in the world and haven't been for over a year. So there's no signs that they will be returning. This is the wishbone. They're different on each side, right and left. We're going to do those and the hardware that attaches them. The guide links are these straight arms, which we just replaced on this car. So we're going to do those because they have to change anyways. And the hardware, and those are eccentric washers and bolts here. So that's all your alignment specs. Then the ball joint is pressed in over here. So with the new wheel carrier, we're going to do both rear ball joints. I'm replacing both axles. I have reason to believe, like, especially when the car's warm, but I'm noticing that it's getting worse, and everything in the rear suspension, everything else is nice and tight. The axles are not original to the car. I bought them from Adam, who parts cars in Maryland, about 4 years ago now. We replaced those. They had 150 on them, so now they've got like 170, 180, 185. And I think they're kind of, so if you're in neutral and you go into reverse and back up a little bit and then first and roll up a little bit, you get these clicking noise from the back, which I'm pretty sure is the CV joints in the axles somewhere. So there's only 4 left in the world. I just ordered 2 of them. Yeah, they're stupid expensive. There's a core charge of $50 on each one, so we'll get a little bit back. But they're still about $1,000 a piece. So we'll do the axles. Then the rear sway bar is going to detach from the links. Hopefully he takes it apart here because I ordered the washers and nuts for that. We'll replace that. Rear integral links, as I mentioned. Shoot, what else? Just all the hardware that's required for this. And it's a lot. I mean, this long-ass bolt here that goes through the whole link, those suckers are 25 a piece. The nuts are like 7. Oh, I hate it. I really do. Like, it doesn't need that aside from the damaged reluctor ring on the bearing. And you can't obviously replace just that. I'll come back over here and show you the bearing. It's kind of just a rubber part of the bearing with little bumps on it, and that's what goes past the sensor. So if we flip the bearing upside down, and this black ring is the reluctor ring, so the sensor comes in here. That's the hole for the sensor, and that's the screw that holds it in. And then it reads through this gap. It doesn't read at the tip of the sensor. If my finger's the sensor, it's not out here. It's like where the fingerprint would be. And it just feels these bumps that rotate right here. Bearing, you know, bolts up like that. And the damage is from when we drilled this out. The drill bit must have just nicked this. And this is some sort of rubber or plastic. It's not a metallic repairable surface at all, but it took a chunk out of it. So the speed sensor seeing this chunk go by, plus whatever the actual thicker part of the ring is that tells it how many times it's rotating, and that's just throwing it off, activating the ABS. So the good news is, even replacing the axles, I don't think we're not going to have to drop the diff or the exhaust or the drive shaft or the rear subframe. So that saves a ton of time and money. Be able to leave it all in the car. Obviously, it's going to need an alignment afterwards, seeing that all of the alignment components are going to be removed from the rear suspension. I'm going to do the bolt that holds the strut onto the carrier, and just anything that comes out is going to be replaced when reinstalled with new parts. So I'll know tomorrow. I'll have a better idea of when the parts I've ordered will arrive. I'm hoping it's by the end of the week if there's anything in Germany, plus 3 to 4 weeks for that, which sucks. Jed's availability might be a factor. I don't know. He's working up a quote for me right now, just like a rough estimate. The reason I can't do this is all the special tools required to separate the hub flange and then extract the axles. You know, they're splined and they go into the bearing, and it's really, really, really tight. In fact, I have a couple over here that in several years I've never been able to do. The 20-ton press maxes out. I bought a big hydraulic gear puller, and that doesn't work. Somehow the axles just weld themselves in there. I don't know what about putting 2 pieces of metal and then spinning them for 100,000 miles. They truly weld together. It just blows. So I already rebuilt the brakes and the parking brake and all of that. So hopefully he's careful and gets that back together right. But that's where we are. Nothing else has changed. My back still hurts and I'm hungry. So I'm going to go home and eat, relax a little bit. 5:45, brief update there. We got the O-rings for the fuel injectors, put those back in, and I'm very happy to report that we have a running N62. That's the big win today. For the first time in 6 or 7 months this car has been here, the engine actually works. Now, we still have a check engine light, of course, because the thermostat has it's a map thermostat code that keeps tripping the light, and that was just replaced with the rebuild all of 7 miles ago, so I don't know what's going on there. We'll have to diagnose. And then, as I've said a million times, we got 1 million more bugs to chase on this car in different codes, so we can start that process. But in the meantime, Caesar's car, we bled the brakes out, so it is all ready to go, except it isn't, because the diff seals are leaking. And that is now, I was 6 of 6. Now I'm 6 of 8, and I don't know what I've done wrong. I take my time with these jobs and follow all torque specs and lube everything up before I slide it together. And the output flanges are leaking, which means dropping the exhaust, drive shaft, the heat shields, differential, putting the diff on the workbench over here. And, you know, the parts are only $20, but it's going to be an entire day's worth of labor to reseal that. And then that starts us over. You know, we put the car up on the lift with the intentions of putting on the nice new expensive belly pan and trans pan that he ordered, and we've had in stock for a month. And we're looking at it like, oh good, the valve covers are dry, rear main's dry, everything looks good. We get to the back, diff's wet. So whole tear down again. Then we got to drive it another 50 miles, which is okay. He's okay with that, and we're still bedding in the clutch, and I prefer to do that so the customer doesn't have to when possible. So I think that's the highest priority. We need this car out of here. Then we move on to King Kong and figure out why it's stuck in gear and why it smells like clutch. And I'm 90% sure we're going to need a new clutch kit and probably a flywheel, because it's probably original and he doesn't know that, and it's going to be expensive. And this car's got big old Brembos on it. That kit cost a fortune. It's got the, PSS 9 coils. That costs a fortune. There's a whole bunch of goodies. I do think that the exhaust is stock minus the mufflers. Yeah, it's got the factory resonator. That's incorrect. We'll be fixing that. The chassis braces are supposed to be down here, although somebody may have done that to kick the exhaust up and away from the center brace. Usually those rattle. This is the guy getting new tires. He's even got the Brembos in the back. Interesting, they spent all that money, stainless lines too, and then left these cheap-ass factory sway brackets. And this exhaust, I remember it being something interesting. Yeah, Haman. Never even seen or heard it. It's really tame. It almost sounds factory. So I'm going to stop rambling, go home and eat. Talk to you guys later. Good Monday evening to you. I had fish sticks for dinner. We watched the Lakers take down the Jazz. A much needed win. It's 11:46 and we're going to bed. As I recapped earlier in not so few words, today was just stressful and overwhelming and expensive and disappointing in many aspects, but it got better, and that's good news. It is still raining. Today was not supposed to rain, and it did. I kind of came down and I'm working on the computer. It's like, what is that noise? I took the headphone out. Boom, it's freaking pouring outside. None of it was really forecasted at all. It did show up on radar, and then it rained on the way home. It's just, I don't care. My car's not out of commission anyways, but it is the rainy season. So I'm going to get some sleep. Tomorrow's Tuesday. Back at it. I'll talk to you guys then. Good night.